The subject that we have at hand today is India's economy and its evolving investment landscape. Now, that could make for a very interesting dinner table conversation, but we've been allowed only 30 minutes, so we'll try to be crisp, but we'll try to get some perspective from our panelists and benefit from their insight. On our panel, we have with us Mr. Prakash Hinduja. He's the chairman of the Europe-based Hinduja Group. We also have with us Mr. Siddharth Balachandran. He's the executive chairman and CEO of Merck Corp. Very good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. One of the issues that has, in fact, we have seen, we saw the pandemic. Just as we were about to recover from the pandemic, we now had the Ukraine crisis. And even as we look past the Ukraine crisis, we're looking at the Fed, which is looking at a rate hike cycle. I just want to get your sense that when we talk of these geopolitical developments and the volatility that it brings, is that the new normal that we need to contend with and perhaps keep in mind and account for while investing in India?
Well, you see, during the time of pandemic, you will see that our economy in India has not been affected. It was a great success that if you see the indicator of the, of the figures, what we have seen, the growth in GDP, which is 8.9%, we saw the FDI investments. After having this 2 years of pandemic of COVID, still India's economy was doing great. And we had a lot of investments coming in India with the new technology and the new programs were happening. And in the healthcare, it was a great success where we were able to build a lot of vaccines and it went on very well. So we would very much wanted, the investments and everybody in the world now recognize India as the great country where the most of the best brains you find in UAE and in America and all around the world. They are doing fantastic, and the population in India every day, the youngsters are 50% of the population, very well educated, and there is a lot of opportunity in India, and I'm confident that this GDP will remain in a couple of years around 8 to 8.9%. That's my feeling.
Mr. Balachandran, same question to you, that we're dealing with a great sense of volatility here, coming from the pandemic, then the Ukraine crisis, and now we're looking at rate hikes. So all of that contributes to a fair bit of volatility. Is this a new normal? The same question to you.
See, Ashmit, rather than volatility, what I would sort of counterject, if I can, would be that in the last 2 years, yes, has been volatile. There's no doubt about it. It's affected everybody, the big, the small, the middle. But I think volatility-inducing events have been happening for a lot of years now. I think in India's case, I think ever since the reforms were taken, the economic reforms in the 90s, the liberalization, that sort of started and set the tone for events that not only could be termed as volatile, not negatively termed as volatile, positive as well, because it induces economies to evolve, countries to evolve.
Sure.
So the last 2 years have, I would say, been a very intense step towards right evolution. Technology has been adapted across the board. Platforms have become user-friendly. More people, more individuals have started investing in a regulated manner.
Sure.
So, yes, there has been volatility, but I think it is not the new normal, it is normal. And this is something that we, if not yet, we need to start incorporating into our daily plans and annual budgets as well.
That's a lovely thought, that this has been the new normal for a while now, and that the businesses are well equipped to deal with that. Mr. Hinduja, let me get your thoughts as far as being accustomed to this sense of volatility and coming to terms with these changes, we're seeing a lot of changes here as far as the Indian economy is concerned. We've seen commodity price hikes, oil price at the retail level, we've seen 6 hikes over the course of 7 days. There are concerns on inflation. How do you see these concerns, these macro concerns, as headwinds for the Indian economy growth, or do you feel that we're accustomed to it and that we'll come to terms to it as we progress?
Well, you know, the oil price is a big concern for India. There's no doubt about this. But there are other sectors which are doing very well, like the price of the wheat have gone up, which is the exports have gone up to 400 billion, you know, in a recent point of the view. So that gives the indication that there are a lot of opportunities for India where the investments from UAE is now going to go up to $100 billion, which gives the favorable economical indication that many countries, they want to come to India and bring in new technology, and the new programs are being introduced into the high tech, and I see there is a great future as for the country's benefit, and the area of agriculture is going to grow also in a big way. And finance minister, if you see Nirmala Sitharaman and the Prime Minister Modi has created so many concessions and so many attractive investment plans they have done, which will bring more and more new investments to India, which India will shine. And I'm confident that the new generation, with the education which they have been going to get from United States, I see during my stay, you know, in India recently, I could see there is a big change have taken place, and the UAE and India will grow in a big way.
You mentioned the exports, $400 billion for India this last fiscal, FY22. You also mentioned various schemes. The PLI scheme, in fact, has been a standout performer for the Indian government in many sectors. Speaking of these initiatives, these incentives that are being offered, which areas would you identify perhaps need that push now as we move forward and look past the pandemic and the Ukraine crisis?
Well, you know, like our group, Hinduja Group, we are focusing now exports of, you know, Ashok Leyland vehicles in African countries. We are also trying to see that in other sectors also, where we are very diversified, we are trying to encourage more and more exports to the different part of the world, where Africa is today the best continent, where the Indian population is there in a big. My plan would be that I would recommend the concepts of UAE, India, Africa. UAE and India can become in a very big plan for globalization,
Sure.
which can bring a lot of success as a win-win situation for other countries as well.
A very interesting thought, and let me take that forward with Mr. Balachandran. Mr. Hinduja here spoke of having this India-UAE-Africa connect. In fact, it is with that concept in mind that the Indian government has pushed through for an FTA, a CEPA, with the UAE. I spoke to the ambassador yesterday. He's very confident that the trade between the two countries will grow from the current figure of $60 billion to $100 billion in the next 5 years. I just want to get a quick sense that from an investor standpoint, which are the areas that you feel stand to benefit and that you would be perhaps keen on looking at as possible investments to benefit from this India-UAE arrangement and acting as a gateway to Africa?
See, I think this is a game changer. CEPA has, I think, it's going to alter perspective. UAE, India have always been close, but this, I think, will tangibilize that proximity. Now, my take on this new situation is that I think 60 to 100 is a given. In that, and this is not me being patriotic either of my residence in UAE or of my citizenship in India. But it is a fact because we're coming off a period of extreme lull for the last 2 years. And ever since, I think, the collapse in 2008 of Lehman Brothers, I think it's been muted. There have been spurts of growth year to year, but the pre-2008 boom sort of stalled. Now, macro headwinds is an issue, but I think the kind of money that has flown into the financial markets have not only artificially altered commodity prices and asset valuations, I think they're here to stay. Now, the only concern that I have is the actual value of money. Because the easing, the QE, which was started by the US many years back, it was only a couple of people who were doing this. Now everybody's doing it.
Sure.
So I'm yet to sort of connect the dots as to what exactly the future commodity cycle is going to be because of these issues. But I would safely say that we are at the cusp of a super cycle. Now, how long that's going to last, I'm not sure. But the only concern I have is the actual devaluing of every state's currency. That is something which I'm concerned about because only if you have certainty in that can you actually plan your investments ahead.
Great. Let me change the theme here as far as investments are concerned. That's macros. We've discussed macros. One of the aspects that I want to discuss, it's not unique to India, but it is something that we have seen hit the headlines more often than not recently, which is the issue of corporate governance. Mr. Siddharth, you're one of the largest shareholders in NSE. National Stock Exchange of India has in fact seen corporate governance issues. It's under investigation. How do you then account for these risks that are posed by corporate governance issues? That's something we've, again, as I said, have hit the headlines far too often. That could perhaps cause some risk, some concern for investments.
No doubt about it. There is a lacunae. But being a person who always looks at the silver lining, my thought is that not of the recurring theme about NSE in the papers, my positive from that, it is happening. It is being bought out. And that shows the strength of our watchdog. I have a great, I'm very impressed with SEBI. I'm very impressed with the Reserve Bank of India. So when you have institutions such as these, yes, blips will happen. And there's no doubt about it. There is a corporate governance issue. But it's not only in NSE. I think there is a corporate governance issue in most companies all over the world. Because absolute corporate governance, let's be frank, does it exist? Ultimately, it's down to an individual. Whether he's a chairman, whether she's the chairperson, whether it's the managing director, whether it's an executive director, ultimately it's... So how exactly do you create a framework that stands the test of time and constantly stands the test of time? Now, that is something which I think a lot of research has been put in and a lot of research has to be put in. And yes, it is a concern. It is a concern for the layman who has just joined the investing fraternity. But I think once he or she starts the process and gains an understanding of the nuances of the economy and the fact that NSE and BSE combined together, you have only around 12 to 13 crore investors, whereas India's population is 130. Developed economies like America and the Eurozone have penetration of almost 30 to 35%. Now, therein lies the gap, the capability gap that, if bridged, will not only make India an economic superpower, but a superpower period. So these issues are being addressed so that that gap can be bridged. And I'm very confident about our government authorities. I have no concern there. But yes, this is a concern which grabs eyeballs.
Mr. Hinduja, same question. When we talk about corporate governance issues, we've seen issues with the banking space. There's been a cleanup there. We've seen issues in the regulatory aspect as far as the markets are concerned. Just your quick thought as to how important that is for a foreign investor who's looking at investing in India.
Well, you see, the point is today the legal part of it. You see, the law still today our law is like, you see, a British, exactly the British system, the law which is there. And what Bala said now, I agree with him. There are a lot of changes that have taken place. The governance, the Reserve Bank of India, the SEBI, they have done a fantastic job. And today, if you see the figures of the settlement, what they are doing every day, it is changed so much. This shows that the new technology has come into the financial sector. And we have seen that there have been a lot of indication from the World Bank, from the IMF, from the IFC, full of praise that how many changes the Reserve Bank has brought into the country.
Sure.
And this gives the indication that there has a long way to go, like the insurance sectors have been improved in a big way. In the similar manner, we have to see what he says, that the investment into the financial sector has to increase tremendously. And this is how you can able to reach to the $5 trillion, management of the infrastructure. Like you are today doing infrastructure in India in a big way. Mm-hmm. Financial sector is also, you need an infrastructure. You need a best of the technology. If you see the Bombay Stock Exchange or New York Stock Exchange or a London Stock Exchange, compared to that, we are still far behind. So we have to increase our investments in India to improve the technology into the financial sector, to have the appetite of taking care of $5 trillion or $10 trillion.
Well, that's the target that the Indian government has set for itself, $5 trillion, an ambitious target, but working towards it. As a part of achieving this target, I just want to get your sense on the final theme. We're running out of time. We don't have a lot of time left, but I have to address this issue, the issue of sustainability as an investment theme. I know that Ashok Leyland is working towards that end.
Yes.
There have been significant investment made towards that end. I just want to get your perspective in terms of looking at sustainability beyond just tokenism, to a point where it actually starts contributing towards the top line?
Well, I think the future is, sustainable energy. We are getting into the sector. We have got this this switch mobility. We brought a electrical vehicle here in the expo, where we have already started electrical vehicle in India. And very soon you'll see in Bangalore, we are in Ahmedabad, we are in Chandigarh. So we are expanding in a big way in this area. We are also getting into the renewable energy, which we have been very successfully started. And the new generation is taking interest in this plan. And we are going to grow this in a very big way. And the same way, that same renewable energy program will expand into the African world also, which will benefit for the Indian manpower, which they have extremely knowledge of renewable energy, which they have done, which no country had so much, manpower, which can be used now, like the IT.
Sure.
IT has grown in a big way worldwide. Same thing, renewable energy also will grow in a big way, where you will find all of them going and helping the other part of the world.
Just taking the sustainability push forward, we've seen a great deal of policy impetus coming from the government as far as electrification of vehicles are concerned. As far as renewable energy is concerned and other sustainability measures, what kind of support would you request the government for in assisting private investment for sustainability?
No, which we have already mentioned, that a private-public partnership is a very important point, which I mean to say India should encourage. And I did mention to the Chief Minister who's here from Tamil Nadu, that how private-public partnership should have a role to be played, where you can have a great scope of expanding the collaborations with UAE and with US and with European world to come in. As today, China, for example, they are far ahead of India.
Sure.
We need India to become like China. Only the policies has to be changed. They have to attract more and more opportunities to investments, bringing the software, hardware. The growth today in software and hardware is very important. It's growing in a big way. So we have to bring more technology into the country, and this can only happen if we are bringing new changes and new reforms into the country.
Sure. Mr. Balachandran, same question to you. Sustainability as a theme, trying to take it beyond tokenism to a point where it actually starts affecting financials and it starts getting in those revenues.
No doubt about it. I think sustainability, I think, is a very, it's become a cliche in the sense that you associate it only with the environment. Now, I'm saying, yes, environment is a very strong, but it's only a very small part of it. If you want it to be truly ingrained in a country, in a government, it has to be truly ingrained in the unit of any country's economy, which is the company. So the company needs to ingrain sustainability not only in its impact on the environment, in its policies, in its manpower, in its corporate governance framework. So sustainability should be a theme that every entrepreneur adopts pre-planning. When he's planning to launch a company, the framework, the vision that he has should immediately be followed with a structure. Now that structure should be all-encompassing. It's not just how much revenue you're going to generate, how much expense budgeting you've done, right from the nuances of how this model is going to last for the next 50 years is the thought process that should be initiated right at the beginning. So sustainability will cease to become a token only if this happens, if it's truly ingrained into the psyche of every entrepreneur who has started a company or who's going to start a company.
Fair enough. We're almost out of time here. Mr. Hinduja, I'll give you the final word here. Again, and this I would again trace our steps back to the first question that I had asked. We're coming out of a pandemic. India is trying to also come to terms with the fallout of the Ukraine crisis. At this point in time, when you stand here, you mentioned you've met very many government leaders. What would your message be to the Indian government to attract private investment? Private investment has been lagging behind public investment. It's hoping for public money to be put first. What will it take now to inspire more confidence within the private sector? And what would your message be to the government?
Well, I think the startup, there are a lot of startup companies are coming in India in a big way. And you must have seen that we have about now so many startup companies are in unicorn in a big way.
51.
And nearly 51 or 64 or whatever it is there. And this will happen exactly in 1 year during the pandemic time. So this will multiply and grow more startup companies. Like you see in UAE today, there are 100 of startup companies have come from India. And they want to show to the world what they are. Same thing we have to see that the SME companies. Now SME companies in India is another opportunity which is growing. And the future of SME companies will be a very attractive, where there will be a great collaboration between the world SMEs and Indian SMEs together. So this can have a great opportunity of investment by creating a center of US, UAE, and India, or a quad, the countries should link up together so that this can have a great investment in which is happening. Today, the whole world wants to invest in India. Why they want to invest in India? Because Indian manpower, Indian brains are recognized all around the world. And that is why I'm confident that with the structure which the government bureaucracy has gone down, the law is improved, and there are a lot of things that are happening in the country which was not happening in the past. So that is why I'm confident that the growth of investments will grow very rapidly in India. Thank you very much.
We're living in interesting times. We're seeing a lot of action globally, and we're hoping that, of course, India is poised to grow, and we're hoping that it continues to grow from here as aspired towards by almost over 1 billion Indians.
To India.
We're committed.
No doubt.
That's the version coming in from the private sector. Mr. Hinduja, Mr. Balachandran, thank you so much
Thank you very
for
much.
joining us and for helping us
Pleasure being
with
here.
that
Thank you.
perspective. Thank you so much.